Kash Patel didn't just walk into the Senate hearing with confidence. He walked in carrying a secret that he never expected would be exposed so publicly, so brutally, and so decisively. And within the first few minutes, it became clear that everything he tried to hide was about to unravel. Because when Patel opened his mouth, he didn't just give the committee an answer. He gave them a warning that something much bigger, darker, and deeply dangerous was unfolding behind the scenes of American law enforcement.
Aware of, in which those cases were allowed to go to judgment, the president was convicted. So we can't allow the weaponization narrative to just remove the notion that the guy was investigated and prosecuted for crimes because he did the crimes. Once you start with the notion that Trump is not a criminal but a victim, you then have to invent the conspiracy that victimized him. And once you've propagated that conspiracy, you then have to find who the conspirators are. So then you have to go after FBI agents and DOJ folks in order to prop up that theory. The way that ended in Soviet Russia was with show trials of the individuals who were allegedly in the conspiracy. The way that ends in Trump's America is with agents and prosecutors forced out in mass purges that may well, as the ranking member Durbin has pointed out, been driven by Kash Patel as a private citizen. So starting with that point, there are three reasons why Kash Patel is extremely dangerous. One is all of his wild MAGA behavior. This is a guy whose judgment is beyond questionable. It's appallingly bad. We have a lot of quarrel about whether his enemies list is an enemies list and whether we're smearing the guy by saying that his enemies list is an enemies list. Here's what he said about it. He showed his enemies list and said, the manhunt starts tomorrow. If they're not your enemies, why would you start a manhunt against them? He called them the criminals themselves and showed a picture of his enemies list. If criminals aren't your enemies, as head of the FBI, who are? He retweeted a video showing him chainsawing the heads off of people on his enemies list. If you're chainsawing the heads off of people, are they not your enemies? So the invention that this is not an enemies list requires people to go into just fantasy land. And these are his own statements. These aren't our accusations. These are Patel's own words. Going after people in the media, impeaching judges who disagree with us, shutting down the FBI Hoover building, on and on and on. This guy is a flagrant extremist with appallingly bad judgment. Second point, we don't know enough about this mischief yet. There are real open questions. We've never in this committee had a person come for a serious senior law enforcement position who had testified in a grand jury criminal matter, and we don't know what he testified about. He's entitled to tell us. That's basic grand jury Rule 6E law. But this side of the committee is completely covering that up. We have absolutely no statement from Patel about what his grand jury testimony was. And he's at liberty to give that to us. He just won't. And Republicans won't tell him to. So he gets away with it. He pled the fifth. You don't get to plead the fifth without a real and genuine concern that you can be prosecuted for a crime. What crime? We're entitled to know. We've never had somebody come through this committee for a high senior law enforcement position who had pled the fifth. He's got the right to do that, of course. We've got the right to know. And by the way, when he exercises the right to do that in a civil proceeding, that entitles the jury to draw the adverse inference that what he is covering up in the civil proceeding with his Fifth Amendment assertion is against his interests. A judge will instruct a jury about that adverse interest. And we're not supposed to draw an adverse interest in this committee when we're not told about his Fifth Amendment assertion. There's all this weird stuff that's come up since about investments in Chinese companies in the Cayman Islands vesting while he will be FBI director. If the guy is supposed to be investigating Chinese intrusion into our intelligence faculties, if we're trying to investigate Chinese fentanyl trafficking into our country, why do we want an FBI director who is somewhere between $1 and $5 million into a Chinese company through a Cayman Islands shell? And then there are the Russia connections. I'll get to those at the end. We don't have to, where everybody's fond of saying these are Democratic smears. Actually, go to the Trump appointees who worked with this guy. What are they warning us? They're warning us, Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton, I didn't think he was qualified. I was forced to hire him. That's some recommendation from a colleague. His deputy, Charles Kupperman. Patel's ideas are ludicrous. He's absolutely unqualified for this job, untrustworthy, an absolute disgrace to even consider an individual of this nature. Definitely you want that on your resume by way of a recommendation from a former supervisor. Attorney General Barr said Patel has virtually no experience that would qualify him to be the deputy director of the FBI, and now he's back as the director of the FBI. And Trump's CIA director, Gina Haspel, threatened to resign rather than allow this guy into her office as her deputy. And if you go beyond the Trump appointees who are warning us about this guy, you can go to the last time he testified in court, which was in Colorado, and here's what the court found about him. That Patel was not a credible witness, that his testimony was illogical, and it was completely devoid of any evidence in the record. Okay, I've been an attorney general, and I've been a United States attorney, and I've put state police troopers on the stand, and I've put FBI agents on the stand. If at the end of a case, a judge made findings like this about a law enforcement witness that I put on the stand, there would be follow-up. I would want an explanation of why this witness was so incredible that findings like that were made by the judge. It would be a significant issue with respect to that witness's continued performance in office. And here's a guy who's been found to be completely incredible by a judge in his testimony, and we're acting as if that's nothing. That's not Democrats. That's a judge in Colorado. So the last thing I'll say is I think we need to begin to prepare ourselves for Trump-Russia 2.0. The Trump-Russia thing was, I'm not going to go back all over it, fully ventilated in the Senate Bipartisan Intelligence Report, in the Mueller report. Trump-Russia was a thing. We stopped talking about it, but Trump kept talking about it, saying it was a hoax. Trump-Russia hoax, Trump-Russia hoax. No, it was not a hoax. It was real. It was there. There's a record. Part of it was bipartisan work. Some of it was done in the House. There was an abundance of evidence about the Trump-Russia connection. And now what are we seeing? We're seeing Patel coming in, who says he wants to wreck the FBI's what he called intel shop, which is the part of the FBI that looks at Russia and does counterintelligence work against Russia. He said that he wants to close out the D.C. office and send everybody out into the field. Well, it's the D.C. office, not the field offices, that do the counterintelligence work. You want to shut it down? You're opening your arms to Russian intelligence operations. You go just across to the Attorney General's office, and there's Attorney General Bondi. What's the first thing she does when she gets in? Closes all the kleptocrature and kleptocracy investigation offices of the Department of Justice. Gee, who were they pursuing? Putin and his oligarchs. You shut down the group that has successfully grabbed assets off Putin's crooked oligarchs. What a signal that is. And then look at Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not going to go through the whole length of her Russia associations, but let's just say that a Russian news media editorial said that her appointment should cause the CIA and the FBI to tremble because she was a friend to Russia. Who defends us against Russian intelligence operations and Russia's criminal operations in the United States? It's the FBI, it's the Department of Justice, and it's our intelligence community. The people in charge of each one have sent powerful signals that they are shutting down our defenses when it comes to Russia. And we're about to head to the Munich Security Conference, where we are seeing Mr. Art of the Deal and his operatives giving away every piece of leverage that we have over Putin with respect to Ukraine. It is unilateral disarmament to throw Ukraine under the bus and give.
And Senator Sheldon Whitehouse was the first one willing to say it out loud. What happened next is the kind of moment that gets buried beneath political noise, but it shouldn't. Because the truth is, the story of Kash Patel isn't just the story of one man being evasive. It's the story of how accountability breaks down from the inside when someone with power decides truth is optional. And it all started with a lie so bold, so unnecessary, and so obvious that it stunned everyone in that hearing room. When Patel was questioned about his past testimony before a grand jury, he claimed he was forbidden from discussing it. He said a federal judge had blocked him. He said his hands were tied. He delivered the line with the kind of confidence only someone absolutely sure no one would check could muster. But someone did. And that someone was Sheldon Whitehouse. Whitehouse didn't rush, didn't yell, didn't posture. Instead, he calmly revealed what the judge Patel cited had already made clear. There was no order stopping Patel from revealing his own testimony. Rule 6E literally allows a witness to disclose their own words. It's one of the few things in the grand jury process that isn't sealed for them personally. So Patel didn't just dodge the question. He invoked the authority of a federal court and used it falsely. And when a man leading the FBI does that under oath, it's not a small mistake. It's an earthquake. But Patel didn't stop there. Months later, facing the same questions again, he didn't correct himself. He didn't clarify. He pivoted to a new story. This time, he claimed the transcript of his testimony had already been released. But that wasn't true either. No transcript existed. No release had ever happened. It was a second contradiction layered over the first, and by that point, Whitehouse wasn't looking at the man, he was looking at the pattern, and the pattern was terrifying. Because think about what it means when the person running the FBI, the agency entrusted with enforcing federal law, lies to Congress about something as basic as his own testimony. He didn't lie about a covert operation. He didn't lie about classified intel. He lied about whether he was allowed to talk about something he said himself. If that's where the dishonesty begins, what does the rest look like? Whitehouse wasn't the only one asking that question. For years, Patel has carried a reputation that even people within his own political circle found alarming. And many of those concerns weren't whispered behind closed doors. They were shouted by the very officials who once worked beside him. Trump's own national security advisor said he was forced to hire Patel even though he thought the man was unqualified. His deputy said Patel's ideas were ludicrous and that he was untrustworthy. The Attorney General at the time publicly stated that Patel had virtually no experience for the positions he held. And Trump's CIA director reportedly threatened to resign rather than have Patel as her deputy. Those aren't partisan attacks. Those are warnings from Patel's own team. Then there's the behavior. Not rumors, his own words, his own posts, his own public statements. When he referred to his enemies list, he didn't do it casually. He talked about a manhunt. He retweeted a video depicting brutal imagery toward people he personally labeled as opponents. Behavior shocking enough that major media outlets and policy experts described it as extremist rhetoric far outside normal political discourse. Critics have said it showed a mindset not of law enforcement, but of vengeance. And while his defenders tried to downplay it, the footage and quotes spoke for themselves. If this alone were his only red flag, it would be enough for concern. But it wasn't. Then came the moment nobody expected. Patel pleading the Fifth in criminal court. Invoking the Fifth Amendment is common. In congressional hearings? Rare. In a civil case involving an FBI director? Almost unheard of. You don't get to plead the Fifth unless there's a legitimate fear that something you say could expose you to criminal liability. That's not speculation. That's law. And while Patel absolutely had the right to do it, Whitehouse was right to question why a person applying for one of the highest law enforcement jobs in the country had to shield himself that way. And that wasn't the only mystery hovering over Patel. After he joined the administration, financial disclosures revealed something else. Investments routed through a Cayman Island structure into a Chinese-linked company. Reports estimate the holdings at somewhere between $1 million and $5 million. Now, that doesn't automatically imply wrongdoing. But optics matter. And when the same person holding those investments would also be responsible for investigating Chinese espionage, Chinese cyber activity, and Chinese fentanyl trafficking, it raises questions even Patel's supporters struggled to answer. Questions Whitehouse felt the public deserved to hear. But the most explosive part of his warning wasn't financial, wasn't procedural, and wasn't even about Patel's lies. It was about something far more dangerous. Something that reaches into the future. Whitehouse said the quiet part out loud. This could be the beginning of Trump-Russia 2.0. Not the headlines from years ago. Not the internet arguments. The real thing. The national security threat documented in bipartisan Senate reports and federal investigations. Whitehouse suggested that Patel wasn't just evading questions. He was positioning himself to dismantle the one part of the FBI that Russia fears the most, counterintelligence. Patel has openly criticized the FBI's intelligence divisions. He's advocated for shutting down the D.C. office, the center of counterintel operations, and sending agents out to field offices that don't specialize in Russia's tactics. Critics worry that such a move would blind the United States to foreign interference, especially from adversaries known for exploiting chaos. Whitehouse also pointed out actions by people aligned with Patel that raised similar concerns. Reports claim that the DOJ's kleptocracy units, teams designed to track and seize assets belonging to corrupt oligarchs, were shut down. These units targeted Russia's elite, the financial backbone of the Kremlin. Their removal sent a signal analysts say Moscow would celebrate. Even foreign media took notice. A Russian outlet once wrote that Patel's allies in government would make intelligence agencies tremble. And while editorial opinions aren't proof, they illustrate a global perception. Certain people being elevated into key roles appear to benefit foreign adversaries far more than American security. That's why Whitehouse's warning wasn't just political commentary. It was a flare shot into the sky. Because if the director of the FBI can lie without consequence, evade questions, hide testimony, carry extremist rhetoric, face credibility issues in court, hold questionable financial ties, and simultaneously push to dismantle America's defenses against foreign interference, then the country isn't dealing with a personnel issue. It's dealing with a structural threat. This isn't about left versus right. It's about whether the nation's most powerful law enforcement agency can still function when honesty disappears at the top. Oversight collapses when lies are rewarded. Democracy collapses when truth becomes optional. And at the heart of this hearing was a simple, devastating question. Do the people responsible for enforcing the law still believe the law applies to them? Whitehouse wasn't asking for politics. He was asking for proof that honesty still matters, that transparency still matters, that the oath sworn before Congress still means something. And Patel couldn't give him any of those things. That silence was louder than the lies. The hearing came to a close. Whitehouse wasn't speaking to Patel anymore. He was speaking to the country. He was documenting the moment so that years from now, nobody can say they weren't warned. He laid out the pattern, the contradictions, the risks, and the road the nation could be heading down if accountability continues to erode. Whether people listen now or later is the only question that remains if you believe these stories matter. If you believe truth and transparency should never be optional, make sure you stay here with us. Make sure you subscribe, share this video, and be part of a community committed to keeping the spotlight where powerful people least want it. Because the only way to protect democracy is to stay awake while others hope you aren't watching.